My name is Nancy Roberts. I'm an economics professor at Arizona State University. Today we're going to talk about supply. In the last video we talked about demand, and in fact specifically we addressed the demand for ice cream cones. Today I want to talk about the supply of ice cream cones. Now, supply is the producer phenomenon. Supply decisions are made by producers, and a producer's goal is profit. So the decisions the producer makes are based on profits. Look, there are some not-for-profit organizations, but that's not the focus of our entire course. Our course is focused on the bulk of economic activity in the U.S., which is for profit. So let's think about a supplier of ice cream cones, and let's assume the supplier wants to make some profit. So the law of supply, we had a law of demand, we have a law of supply as well. The law of supply says, as price increases, ceteris paribus, the quantity supplied increases. So this is opposite of the way the consumer views ice cream and prices. So let's write the law of supply. As price increases, ceteris paribus, quantity supplied increases. Again, we're holding, when we construct a supply curve, we're holding a group of determinants constant. So let's put up a hypothetical supply schedule for ice cream cones. So here's the supplier of ice cream cones, price, quantity supplied. If the price is, let's say, $3, this producer is willing to put 5 ice cream cones on the market. If the price is $2.50, let's think about it from the producer's perspective. Put on your producer hat. I'm not going to sell these as high a price. My profits are going to be less. I'm not as willing to put things out there at these lower profit margins. $4 cones. If the price is $2, he'll only put 3 on the market. If the price is $1.50, I'm making up numbers here, 50 cents, he's not putting any on the market at 50 cents. There's no profit. 0. And of course, if the price is 0, he's not putting any on the market either. So what we have here is a supply curve for ice cream cones. And as you can see, as price increases, ceteris paribus, the amount this producer is willing to put on the market also increases. I mean, if he could sell these for $10 a piece, he'd work really hard. He'd run 2 or 3 shifts every day to get more cones out there because of the high price people are willing and able to pay. So what we can do is construct a supply curve. So let's just do that. Quantity supplied. If the price is $3, 5, this producer will put 5 cones on the market. Let's just call that point F. And I'll mark that as point F. So there's one point on our supply curve. If the price is $2, the producer is willing to supply 3 cones. 1, 2, 3. So that's right here at $2, 3 cones. I'll call that G. And let's just say the price is 50 cents. He's not supplying any. I'll call that point H. H, G. So what we have here is, if you squint, a linear supply curve. Here's my supply curve. As price increases, ceteris paribus, quantity supplied increases. Now again, movement from H to G is an increase in quantity supplied. It is not an increase in supply. It is an increase in quantity supplied. Changes in price change quantity supplied. They don't change supply. They change quantity supplied. So movement from H to G is an increase in quantity supplied because price increased. Movement from F to G is a decrease in quantity supplied because price decreased. So we want to make sure we understand what changes in quantity supplied mean. They mean moving along a supply curve. Now, just as we had ceteris paribus variables that were held constant when we drew this supply curve, we also have determinants or ceteris paribus variables that will actually change the supply. And so we want to list those. The determinants, these ceteris paribus variables that are held constant when we construct a supply curve. The first one would be a change in the price, not of ice cream cones, but of an input. So, for example, you're a producer. You're making ice cream cones. You want to make a profit. And you know how much you have to pay for the milk. You know how much you have to pay for the sugar. You know how much you have to pay for the help that works in your shop. You know how much you have to pay for mortgage, for the building. If the price of one of those inputs into the production process changes, let's say the price of milk goes up. Milk used to be $2 a gallon. You make your ice cream using $2 a gallon milk, and now milk goes up to $3 a gallon. Well, if milk goes up to $3 a gallon, what it means is that, for example, the price, if you could sell them for $2, you'd be willing to sell 3, but that was when milk cost $2 a gallon. Now milk costs $3 a gallon. And so, if you're going to continue to put 3 ice cream cones on the market, you're going to have a higher price than you did before because milk is more expensive. That's true at all of these levels of ice cream cones. So in fact, if you want this producer to put 3 cones on the market now that milk is more expensive, he's going to have to get a higher price for his ice cream cones. If you want him to put 1 cone on the market, he was willing to put 1 cone on when it cost $1, when you were willing to pay $1, but now that his milk is more expensive, he's going to have a higher price. So what you have is a decrease in supply. This red supply curve, I'll just call it S2, is a decrease in supply. You make it confused by saying, well, wait a minute, that's higher, isn't that an increase? I'm going to show you in a minute how to make sure you understand the difference between an increase and a decrease. This is a decrease in supply. I mean, you can look at it across quantities or you can look at it across prices. I mean, look at this $2 price. He used to supply this many when the price was $2. Now he's only going to supply this many. So he's decreased his supply. So if there's a change in the price of an input, that is going to change the supply curve. Another determinant of supply would be if there's some change in technology. Changes in technology often decrease costs because they make it easier to produce things, make it less expensive. And so what we often find is that changes in technology actually increase supply. So there's some new technique, some new machine that cuts in half the time that it takes to turn milk and sugar into ice cream, then in fact he'd be willing to supply more because of this new change in technology. And so the supply curve would shift from here down to here. That would be an increase in supply. Another determinant, one of these ceteris paribus variables, would be the number of suppliers. This is just like a population increase in demand. If there was only one guy providing ice cream cones, he's a single supplier, and all of a sudden somebody else says, wow, look at the money that guy's making selling ice cream cones. So you entice new entrants into the market. So now instead of one guy selling cones, we have two guys selling cones, and the supply increases if the number of suppliers increase. If an industry shrinks in size, if suppliers decrease, people get out of the market, then we'd have a decrease in supply. So the number of suppliers is also important. There are other things other determinants, they're minor. So I think we're just going to stick with these major determinants. But you can see that movement from anywhere on, I'm going to call this S1, let's say movement from G to this point, which I'll call X. Movement from G to X is actually a decrease in supply. We've moved off of this supply it's not a decrease in quantity supplied. The only way it can be a decrease in quantity supplied is if you stay on the same supply curve. If you move off of this curve, it's a decrease in supply. So movement from G to X is a decrease in supply. Why did supply decrease? Because something here happened. If we move from G to H, that's a decrease in quantity supplied. What would cause a decrease from G to H? Well, that would have to be a change in price. We're on the same supply curve. In our next lecture, we're going to put these supply and demand curve together, and it'll be fun.